What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. Guys, this is going to be a new segment that I'm going to try, and I guess I could explain it like this. Preceding every American YCS, you guys know that I make a bold prediction video. Generally, I'll explain what I think is going to win, and then I'll talk about what is going to happen from a competitive standpoint at that event. Make a bunch of bold and provocative statements. Then usually following that, about 3 or 4 days later, I make my top 5 list, the Yu-Gi-Oh hierarchy. Now, that's obviously comprised of what I believe at the time is the top 5 decks of the format, and I take in consideration from not only the most recent YCS, but obviously the regional circuit too, because the regional circuit is much bigger and more accessible for every player. Now, this series is going to be a segment that I'm going to ingratiate with the other two. It's going to run in tandem in between the other two videos. This is going to be a video where I basically break down, that prediction video, what I was wrong on and what I was right on. It's pretty basic and pretty simple to understand. Now, people, you might be thinking, oh, Capital G, why would you want to highlight what you were wrong on? Don't get caught up in being right or wrong. That's for schmucks. Let me give you a tip for any aspiring YouTubers out there. Don't worry about being wrong. Be interesting. You want to get the 15,000 subscribers like Asian Eyes White Dragon? Be interesting. Don't worry about being wrong or right. That stuff will play itself out. I have almost 12,000 subscribers. Not a single one of you has ever sent me a message saying, Capital G, I subscribe to you because you were right. Being right doesn't mean anything. Being interesting, far more important. So, I'm going to go ahead and break it down. Where Capital G was wrong. Boy, was I wrong about INZEKTORs. I said it wasn't even going to be a deck anymore, and Billy Broke right out the gate proved me wrong. In fact, I was so astonished that I picked the deck up myself and took it to a pretty decent 7-2 finish at regionals. I look at INZEKTORs as a deck, and it lost its 2 most important cards, which both got limited, and you just think, how can the deck still function at a high level anymore? And then the deck goes out and it has its most impressive tournament finish ever. Now, I know some of you guys are going to say, well, Capital G, INZEKTORs won Worlds. Please, it's a 4-round tournament with 30 people in a 1-day fake made-up ban list. It doesn't matter at all. It's a lot like the MLB All-Star Game, where Capital G was right. Windups are the best deck of the format, and as soon as I started seeing the 2-card OTKs and the shock lock combos, I pretty much knew it. They did lose the Hunter Loop and they lost the 3s and Mighties, but you could even make an argument that right now the combos that they have are even more potent because they easily allow you to OTK. There was one matchup initially that I thought was going to be very, very dicey. That was the hero match, but I wasn't sure if that was going to be prevalent enough to really curb what Windups was trying to do and to curb the numbers that Windups would see at events. I look at the macro element and I think that it doesn't take away nearly enough from this deck. You look at decks like INZEKTORs and Mermill, which can be completely eviscerated by this single card. But, outside of cards like Windup, Red, and Pot of Avarice that are adversely affected, it doesn't really shut this deck down. One of the biggest reasons that Windups have, such a stronghold on this format, and why I think that they're the top deck right now, is how much utility they get out of the extra deck. The deck basically has not only cards in there that are specifically used to facilitate OTKs and loops, but it also has cards to pretty much answer every single element and every single position that the deck can be put in. I mean, you have to also remember that Windups can make exceeds basically from rank 6 to rank 3, where Capital G was wrong. Twice early this format, I put Chaos Dragons as second in the Yu-Gi-Oh hierarchy, and I kind of regret that. I look at this deck and I think it was in peak and prime position to basically challenge Windups for the best deck of the format, but I've never really believed that that matchup was ever advantageous. I look at this deck and it's like, it plays and it's pretty much structured exactly like Agents, except in the early game you don't have that Future Fusions, oh my god, auto win play anymore. And I think that Agents get a little more utility out the early game because you have cards that can make good advantage. Cards like Earth and cards like Venus, where you have the solid, safe gotcha play. I also think the fact that the boss monsters and Agents just do a little better job of, either getting field control or just making sure that you're easily able to remove threats without having to attack. Obviously Hyperion being a +1 if you can just blow up a monster, or Christia potentially being a +1, and even more potent is just the fact that she just locks down, entire decks. I look at Chaos Dragons and I think you play exactly the same way as Agents. I just think that Agents are a little better because, they can easily side deck things like Goes in Match, which can completely shut down the Windup and the Dino Rabbit matchups, which are 2 prevalent matchups right now in the format. And I don't really know where the place for a deck like Chaos Dragons is. You know, even the whole chaos elements, agents kind of steal that from you too, because you look at decks like Simon He's version and he runs that too. So I think that Chaos Dragons are still good, but I don't think that they're going to be a top 5 deck in this format when everything is played out. Where CapitalG was right. Macrocosmos is slowly but surely becoming the be-all end-all anti-meta card of the format. I told you guys on November 4th, practically a month ago, that this card would wreck up the meta, and you look almost a month later, YCS Barcelona won by Macro Rabbit. I think personally, if you're running an anti-meta deck, you gotta find a way to get this card in your deck if possible. You just look at the matchups across the board, things like Mermaid Atlantean, INZEKTOR, even a rogue matchup like Dark World. You flip over this one card and it's just complete extermination of those decks. You know, there's a reason why Macro Rabbit is such a successful deck right now. It's not just because of the Walking Solemn Judgment or the Walking Double Divine Wrath. It's the fact that you can flip up this card and completely fuck up your opponent's day. You even look at decks that where you don't think it would be, you know, as great against cards like decks like Six Samurai, where they can't send their things to the graveyard like Dojo and United. Against things like Agents, where you have all their agents removed, so later in the game they can't summon those Hyperions. Against things like Machina Gear Frame, where, you know, it's very, very difficult for them to drop Fortress on you because they have to discard extra machines. Otherwise, if they try and discard the Fortress, it'll just be removed and they won't be able to summon it. So, you know, honestly, if this was sports, Macrocosmos would it'd be getting my vote for Heisman or MVP right now. Where CapitalG was wrong. Dark World players, I am disappointed. I even put out an entire guide, an entire 9-minute video of how you can have sustained success with the Dark World archetype. You know, I look at Dark World and I just can't understand, I can't wrap my brain around why the deck can't have the level of success that I know it has the potential to. Like, the Dark World reminds me of the Dallas Cowboys. Like, it has all the pieces in place. It has all the tools it needs. It has a ridiculously broken boss monster that not only blows cards up, but practically can't die. It has the speed of a deck like Teledad, where you can run Allure of Darkness, Upstart Goblin, Brow, Gates of the Dark World. It has deck thinning power in cards like Snow, where you can grab any Dark World card, but it can't bring it all together. Like, why is it anytime that there's a regional top 8, Dark World can't ever put more than one deck in top 8? You know, why is it whenever there's a YCS, Dark World can't ever put more than like one player in, and if it ever has more than one, it's like, oh my god, what? You know, even when Mike Balan won, you know, the YCS Long Beach with Dark World, he was like the only player running the deck in the top 32. So I look at Dark World and I'm like, you have all the pieces in place, so why is the deck as dysfunctional as the fucking Oakland Raiders? I just don't get it. I mean, and I don't know if this is just a bad format. I mean, now with the whole macro element being everywhere and people running things like, you know, Soul Drain, I don't know that you're ever going to get to that good potential that you had earlier in the format.